If you're considering quitting medicine and slipping that white coat off your shoulders for good, this video is for you. I'll be outlining what happened specifically to my marriage, family, happiness, career, and yes, finances in the years after I quit medicine. If there's anything you're left wondering at the end of the video, drop your question in the comments and I'll answer them all. Marriage. After I quit, despite the financial hardships, again, we're gonna talk about that a little bit more at the end of the video, everything got simpler, including our relationship. At night, we were accustomed to a pattern of me showing up home from work, feeling resentful, moody, and having to shake off the day for 2 hours until I could, quote, be myself again for the last hour or two before we went to bed. After I left medicine, when I resumed responsibility over what I knew to be true about what I wanted and who I was as a person, that resentment at night completely disappeared. If I have a bad day now, it's just a bad day. It's not an indictment on my career. It's not an indictment about who I am as a person. There's no questions about, when am I gonna finally do what I need to do with my life? All that stuff is gone. It's not a part of my relationship with my wife anymore. It's not a part of my headspace anymore. And it's made all the difference in the world because even on the hard days, I can just show up, be present. We can still cook dinner together, talk about the day, and then the slate's clean. There's no medicine veil to have to cut through and figure out every single night when I get home from work. It all comes back to being more present and being a better husband because I'm more of who I am. So I can offer more of who I am, and less of that is getting gobbled up inside of medicine every day. That gift of just being myself again around her is the greatest gift of leaving medicine, period. Family. I'm one of the lucky ones. Since I left, I've had fairly unanimous support from my parents and my family. They did communicate a healthy level of worry. After all, I just married, had $200,000 in debt, and I was leaving a $400,000 per year career, but mostly I felt their support at my back. Though, no one seemed to know what to say to me at the holidays. I'm the eldest grandkid who had walked the National Honor Society straight and narrow path all the way into becoming a doctor. So, when I arrived home for Christmas that first year after I left with a new tattoo and unemployed, things were a little awkward. But after those first few tenuous holiday events, things have been pretty much back to normal. Hardly anybody ever asked me about medicine, just like I rarely ask other members of my family what's going on in their professional life. I have begun to just be a member of the family again, which I guess never really changed. So if you want to take anything away from this, it's that nobody really cares what you do with your life. For years, I imagined the welfare of my family hanging in the balance. And if I left medicine, the whole group would just free fall into oblivion. This is not what has happened. The degree to which I overestimated my self-importance and my impact has been staggering. Things got back to normal very quickly. There were a few emotional reactions and some really emotional conversations, but we got through those. I was honest. I told everybody in my family, I can't do this anymore. I know that being a doctor is a lucrative career. I know it's very stable. I know it's very secure. I know I could make a lot of money. But for me to survive to the other side of this, I have to go do something different with my life. I have to go figure out who I am and what I want. And as long as I'm in medicine, I'm not gonna be able to do that. I didn't really get a lot of pushback to that comment. I do still get all of the family medical emergency calls in the middle of the night or at all hours of the day, and that is exactly how I would want it to be. I feel like I can do my job as a family member a lot better than I could whenever I was actually in medicine. Whenever I resented my job, I resented my work, and anything that brought medicine back up into my life even more just added fuel to that resentment. So I actually feel like I'm a lot more present now to be able to help in those situations than I was while I was practicing psychiatry. Happiness. On my first day out of medicine, it felt like I'd been released from prison, or so I imagined the feeling to be like. It would be all joy, happiness, purposeful work, love, sunshine, surfing, mountain biking, everything I felt like I'd given up to go be a physician. This bliss, it did last for about 2 weeks. I was legitimately high on pure bliss and relief for about 2 weeks, but this was just happiness in the absence of medicine and really not because of anything else. I also slept a ton, like 10 to 12 hours per night for at least a month, maybe 2 months. My wife was kind of worried. Then about 3 months after I quit, I had a sober realization. I was essentially still the same person that I was while I was in medicine. The bad habits, the good habits, all of them were me. There wasn't some magic light switch that was just gonna make me into some happy person now that I was out of medicine. After the initial relief and ecstasy wore off, man, I was the same guy that I'd been throughout residency pretty much. Then I had another realization. The hard part had just begun. All those years I'd been dreaming that my life would be perfect when I finally summoned the ability to leave medicine. I actually built an entire identity around surviving and trying to fight my way out of medicine. I had to build a whole new identity. It felt like I was actually further away from being happy at times than I was while I was in medicine, because I could always just blame all my problems on residency or med school or whatever else I wanted to cast my blame on, and all of that disappeared whenever I left medicine. All that responsibility for my happiness, everything on my shoulders. Nowhere to take it anymore. No more blame. And this part of the journey sucked. Turns out there's a reason why people do not leave medicine, and it's because of this part, because this part really sucks. On many levels, it was easier to just continue going to clinic, seeing patients, and come home and blame medicine for my problems. All that to say, yes, I was much happier, but in a different way than I ever could have expected. My days became much more meaningful because they were a grind. And whenever I would show up to try to figure something out, whether it be in the furniture company that I own or a piece that I was working on writing, or just like figuring out how to come up with enough money to pay the bills, I had to figure it out. And that struggle was something I did not understand how badly I needed. How I dealt with relationships, how I responded to adversity, what my thoughts were like when I first got out of bed. I was not a different person for about a year. Then my internal headspace started to reflect my new reality. It was a slow, tedious turnover, but it happened. Career. That first day out of medicine, I started writing. A month later, I started a website where I published essays and a newsletter that I write every week, and I continue to do that. Since I've published hundreds of pieces, and I have made a grand total of about $0. When I began writing, grandiosely, I might add, I imagined raving success and book deals and people buying a lot of things that I wrote. I was obviously unaware of how the publishing industry works. I do think that this grandiosity was helpful. To be able to leave behind medicine, I think I had to work up this idea that what I was gonna do was gonna be so big that it could justify why I would leave medicine and, you know, why I would leave the opportunity to help people every day. Obviously, writing has not done that. I don't expect it to do that. And now I hope I'm closer to not needing it to do that. What it has done is allowed me the chance to fall in love with showing up to work again every day. Distanced from external gratification, my vice, I've had the opportunity to write to please myself and myself alone. It's been a beautiful gift because it's allowed me to work on something that's important and meaningful to me, while at the same time allowing me to unpack and digest a lot of things that came up for me whenever I decided to leave. It was almost like I was getting out of a relationship, which in many senses it was. I mean, medicine was like my significant other for 8 years. Man, and for now, I just plan to keep writing because I want to, and I get something out of it. Just a few weeks after I resigned, I was walking around our neighborhood when I saw an abandoned children's picnic table left at the curb. Nothing special about it. It was old, warped, all the paint had peeled off from sun and rain. It was destined for the landfill. But I saw an opportunity, and I saw something in this piece. I felt like it wasn't done yet. It still had life. I took it back to our apartment, sanded it down on our patio, painted it baby blue, inscribed a quote on it from Christopher Robin. Why? I have no idea. I'm not particularly a Winnie the Pooh fan. Then I sold it for $65. I had no idea then that 2 years later, today, I would own a furniture restoration company. But one piece led to another piece and another piece. And then I looked up and I had a real business that I enjoyed showing up to every day. Now I write in the mornings, and then through the midday and the afternoon, I recruit new business. I go out and I source commission work, and then I work on furniture. It's been incredibly meaningful in the most surprising fashion possible, because I had really never used my hands before I picked up that picnic table. It even helped us survive Hurricane Helene here in Asheville, where we live now. And I got a video on that. I'll put it in the show notes. None of these career changes were planned. None of them I could have predicted before I left medicine. It all just happened after I left medicine. Maybe if I went into consulting or something like that, I could have found some kind of monetary fit that was close to medicine, but man, those jobs don't grow on trees. But furniture kind of does, so they are trees. Through all this, I've learned one thing, and it's that if you want to have happiness inside of your career, you usually have to sacrifice at least one thing, maybe two things. I had to sacrifice external gratification, and I've had to sacrifice money. And man, it's been worth it. Let's talk finances. For every question I've been asked about why I left medicine, I've been asked 15 questions about how I'm making money after I've left medicine. How did I make ends meet? Not well, I must admit. Thank God my wife was gainfully employed. Like I mentioned earlier, I overestimated how much money I could make writing, and I underestimated how long it would take to successfully launch a furniture business in an industry that I had no experience. It took time to turn my effort into profitability. A couple of factors helped our financial situation immensely. First, for the vast majority of the 2.5 years since I left medicine, my student loans have been in a forbearance, not accruing any additional interest. Without any kind of partisan debate about the handling of our student loan situation in this country by our federal government, I must say the situation has helped me, because in a time where I wasn't making a lot of money, at least I wasn't having to pay back student loans and I wasn't accruing any interest. In my situation, that was beneficial. Secondly, I had access to $1,500 in additional passive income from the real estate business that I started while I was in residency. Having those funds were invaluable. Was I living on easy street though because of those funds? Hardly. I was living in California. The $1,500 I made in passive income from real estate paid roughly a third of our rent. When my wife and I moved to North Carolina about a year after I left medicine, the vice grip on our finances loosened a little bit. My furniture business began to take off. I got a showroom where I could sell more furniture, started getting more commissions, and everything loosened up a little bit. It did help that our living expenses were a third of what they were while we were in California. And now, finally, things are stable. If I keep my focus on what's before me, and I keep working on work that I love, I trust that things will work out. And maybe that's because I've read too many books like The Alchemist. Or maybe it's because I've lived the other side of the coin, where I made massive sums of money at the cost of understanding who I was. And I'm not giving that up again. For me, for my wife, for my family. If you like this video, a like and a subscribe help me grow the channel, and it also gets this video out to more people who would connect with it. Until next time, let's keep fighting for that life we love.